It's a pretty flat course. I don't think anybody's going to be having memories of Hamburg as they would have done last Monday, Boston, and the Heartbreak Hill, and coming down off those hills. As I was saying, it's a really busy time in the marathon season, spring marathon season internationally. And Hamburg has a lot of 42.195 kilometers. The start and finish right by the Marathon Expo, the Hamburg Messe, which is used for many other exhibitions apart from, naturally enough, Marathon Expo Week. And it's a very different sport. If you're seeing hand biking for the first time and you've been familiar with Paralympic sport and watched the Olympics, for example, London 2012, the wheelchair competitors, it is very different. There are different demands. It's certainly proved popular. Now, I don't claim to be an expert, but some may say that it's a somewhat easier sport to get into than the wheelchairs. It depends upon the disability level. And certainly a wheelchair in Paralympic sport is getting an ever bigger place in the media profile these days, and rightly so. And the London 2012 really gave it a boost. And I think we look ahead to Rio, which is coming up fast next year, isn't it? That again should give a real stage to Paralympic sport. And it's not just every 4 years either, not just coming out of a kind of closet every 4 years. It's in many competitions around the world. And the organising team of the Haspa Hamburg Marathon busy, as you'd expect, led by the race director Frank Thalheiser. Apart from the close to 20,000 who are taking part in the marathon, there's also the relay teams, 6,000 of those. There's 4 in each team be running the total marathon. And they were busy the day before as well for what they call the Zehntel, which is the youth and kids races, around 7,000 taking part in that. A tenth of the marathon distance. And that also is a feature of Hamburg. It's also been a feature of Berlin and indeed in London. The mini marathon in London was a platform for success for those who went on to have gone on to great things, not least Mo Farah, who won the mini marathon in London. And then, well, we all know, if you're a running fan, I think you know the achievements of Mo Farah, but double Olympic success, any number of World Championship medals, and well, he's coming up to those World Championships himself in Beijing in August. And it does seem that for the moment his marathon career is on hold. There's talk about coming back to the marathon after Rio, the Olympics next year, but we'll see. It's not always a given, it's not always automatic, as we've seen down the years, that runners who are very good on the track and are distance runners, 5 and 10,000 meters, and indeed at the half marathon on the road, it doesn't mean that you then move to the same level of success when you go to the marathon. It's a different beast. Well, our aerial shots giving us a feel of the clouds, slight mist. The temperature's around 12 degrees centigrade, so that's pretty much ideal, really, depending on whether it can hold that. But 12 degrees at the start, I think most marathon runners would take that and say thank you very much. Humidity is high, though, 92%. Close to 5 minutes before the off. And talking of how the race has grown in the years, in quality as well as numbers, interesting to read in the German press an interview with Sabrina Mockenhaupt, Mocky, as she's known throughout Germany, who's she's got the best of 2:26 and is the leading German women's contender here, and she's coming back into form after a disappointing run in the New York half marathon in March. But she was talking about her family connections. Now, she's not from Hamburg. She's a Rhinelander rather than a North German. But she said back in the 90s, her mother, just had a little glimpse of Mockenhaupt there. Her mother ran and did very well here. And her father, in fact, holds the family record, which is 2:24 in a few seconds. So I'm sure Sabrina Mockenhaupt will be delighted to at last break the family record. The elite getting ready. Netzelat Abeyo, just a brief shot of the course record holder on the right there. She's wearing a kind of purpley kit. And more of her later. There's a link between the fastest man in the field and woman, and that they are man and wife. They're married to each other. The fastest man, Faisa Bekele and Meseret Hailu, both be wearing one. Well, the man will be wearing one, and the lead woman, the fastest woman, on paper at least, will be wearing F1. That's the standard way they have the numbers there. Hunego Mesfin just went out of shot there from Ethiopia, making his debut in the marathon. It's always a leap to an extent into the unknown. It's ideal for the runners when they finish their toil on the roads to be coming back at the finish. The expo is there, they can leave their kit, and much better than the old days. Of course, the marathons were very different if you go back before the 1970s, and a big field in the marathon would be 200. It's a different world. And a brief shot of a runner, European runner, with pace on his back. Now, if you see pace, it doesn't mean there's another pace 1-4. It does not mean that it's a big family, all named Pace or Passé. There will be pacemakers as ever for these big city marathons, for both the men's and women's races, which all start at the same time, I should add. And they'll be designated to various groups, going for different times. And one of the more interesting entries in the men's field is going to be wearing, just seeing, number 11. That's the Mongolian record holder, Zeod Bat Ochir. And I have a little bit to say to him. He's got a best of 2 hours, 8 minutes and 50, so I'm pretty sure he's going to be featuring high up there. So just a couple of minutes to go before we are underway. Stefan Olitska wearing that blue vest. Very solid career so far as a steeplechaser for Germany. And now this is his first marathon. So a lot of anticipation, see what he could do. It wouldn't be fair to place too many expectations on his shoulders. I mean, I'd be amazed if he's up there with the men who are running 2:06. But if he can run a solid time, 2 hours 15 or better, then Olitska could be looking at selection for the World Championships in Beijing. Faisa Bekele, a 2:06 man, the fastest in the field. He lines up, and there's our Mongolian Ochir just waiting to get away. Olitska relaxing in the hill right next to the Mongolian record holder. He's got an interesting background with the British Northeast as well. More of that in a little moment. It'll be the mayor of Hamburg, Olaf Schulz, who will get them underway. Olaf Schulz, the mayor of Hamburg, will set them in motion. Oh. Well, that was, shall we say, not the smoothest of starts. I think a couple of watches will have to be restarted. But they're off and away on the Hamburg-Marathon 2015. 19,500 pairs of feet are going to be getting on their way. Conditions pretty much ideal. 12 degrees centigrade. Humidity, though, is high, but it's overcast. No rain so far. And if it stays like this at this kind of temperature, they couldn't wish for better conditions for what is becoming one of the best European city races. And in these days of chip timings that the runners are given and they wear tied to their shoelaces, nobody has to worry about when they cross the line. They'll get their timing correct. The elite, meanwhile, are off at a somewhat faster pace, but these are good, solid men and women. And everyone who lines up is hoping to beat their personal best. It's the quest of the marathon. That was just a brief glimpse of how many are taking part. It can be a problem sometimes if you're amongst the mass runners to actually get your stride going. If the field is too packed, I know some friends who've run London Marathon in recent years saying that if you're a 4-hour runner, it is sometimes tricky to be getting a clear run. A little different amongst the top men and women there. They like to run close together, kind of keying off each other's energy, just observing their rivals, and also as a windshield. But they're just so more adept and so more practiced at training in the group. That's what, especially for the Africans, that's what they do. Very rare that you find African elite runners who train a lot on their own. They may do the occasional run if they're outside of Africa, but everything in Africa, Kenya, Ethiopia, it's all about the group training. First couple of kilometres, once they've set off from this Marathon Expo, we'll take them along the Reeperbahn, the dancing towers of the Reeperbahn. There's showbiz, nightlife, some pretty colourful nightlife as well on the Reeperbahn, but certainly Hamburg has got a lot more to offer than simply the Reeperbahn, but it is traditionally, as a port city, that's part of the heritage and the history of Hamburg, and still is very much a port. Part of the entertainment offered to the sailors and seamen who over the centuries have come to Hamburg. It's been a big trading nation, and perhaps you could see the marathon in the way that the marathon is big business these days all over the world. Cities know the economic value of the marathon in terms of tourists, foreign runners who come and stay for a few nights, shop, buy, not just running kit. My goodness. Well, that, I'm not sure what to call that. A cartoon figure? It's not Superman. I presume we've got some, he had some eye holes in that all-in-one costume. Can't imagine what it's like running in that. And then we just have an impression of just how many people there are running or taking part, because some haven't even got into a run. But yes, talking about that economic aspect, it's a big business. And it fits with that history of Hamburg. The Hanseatic League really goes back to 12th century, really, when they were trading with England. Henry II signed a charter for merchants in Hamburg to have trading contours, as they said, trading houses in Britain. They did a lot of trade with the east coast of England, and they traded all over Europe, part of the Hanseatic League, which really by the 14th century was a very powerful economic influence. And they also had armed forces created for group protection. And it wasn't just Germany, it was in Sweden and other Nordic countries as well. And just going back, if I may, to my own experience of living in Hamburg in the mid-70s as a student teacher, beginning my running career, you didn't see anybody running on the streets. And when I used to run easily, well, run easily, let's qualify that, have an easy run to the school track where I worked, about 10 minutes from my home, people said, we don't see anybody running on the street. You would go to the forest for a Wunderläufer, as they said, and it was beautiful running in the forest. And that's what I was saying earlier about Hamburg having such greenery. It is a lovely place to run, both in the city with all the parks and outside. But you just did not see anybody running on the streets. You were regarded as very strange indeed if you were running on the streets. You travelled to the track and you did a session on the track, or you ran in the forest, but you travelled there. You didn't run. Now in the leading group, they set off just some information coming off our timing, our Mika timing. First kilometre 3:03, so that's a pretty good opening split. So they are bang on. They've gone through 2 kilometres now, and that's total time 5 minutes 57. They are bang on the men's course record, but it's so early that in a way I almost feel embarrassed telling you about course records and things like that. But 2 hours 5 minutes and 30 seconds by Eliud Kipchoge 2 years ago. That is the course record, so they're right on that kind of time. But what we're hoping for is some exciting competition, certainly at the front. We see those shots of the building. That is the expo, where they've got changed, left their kit, and systems are so efficient these days, I'm sure they'll be able to retrieve it. That in itself, a marathon isn't just about the people running it. It's really a marathon and a logistical test for the organisers all around the world to see how well they can organise this, because again, picking up that economic and big business theme, if runners don't like the way they've been treated, if the organisation has been bad, they haven't had their kit at the finish, the bananas and the water haven't been available, they think, well, shall we go back and do that this year, next year rather, or are we going to be going somewhere else? And that represents a considerable financial loss. Now, of course, you don't have to run, you can always walk. And they are just slowly making their way along. And now, first chance to really have a look at the elite, the men. They went off in good tempo, right on the 5:30 pace, which is impressive indeed. And there's our Mongolian record holder. I make no apology for picking him out. We're so used to looking at the Africans, but nice to see someone else amongst the league group. But Ochir, 2:08.50, his best time. He's got an interesting tale because his career's really come on since he moved to Britain and the northeast of Britain, which has been for so many years a bedrock of distance running. May not produce quite the stars it used to in terms of, well, Steve Cram, Brendan Foster. That's a test of your memory. Brendan Foster, European champion at 5,000 metres in 1974. And many more beside. Charlie Spedding, who was Olympic bronze medalist for Britain in Los Angeles in '84. the last British man ever to win a medal in the marathon. And I sometimes wonder if there'll be another. But Biwott, Mongolian record holder, he was beginning his running career and doing pretty well, running 2:13, something like that. And then he needed better competition. He made a nice remark that he said, in Mongolia, I have to wear 4 layers of clothing just all the time for more than half the year. So he met some Morpeth Harriers, which is a famous old club in the northeast of England, at a race. And they said, well, why don't you come out to, as they would say, Geordieland, Morpeth. And he did. He became a Morpeth Harrier. Probably, I'm sure, the most distinctive runner they've ever had. Did a lot of the 10K road racing series, which they have up there. And indeed in Britain, a lot of 10K road races. And flourished. And really gave a boost to his career. News from, well, the computer, I have to say, and we're just waiting to catch up with the elite group. At 3 kilometers, the men went through in 9 minutes and 7 seconds. So they are sort of going a little up and down the pace. They began with a 3:03, then they dipped under 3 minutes with 2:55, and then they were slower with 3:10. I was saying that the course is not hilly. There are a few undulations, but it's a pretty flat course, and so ideal for smooth and fast running. But the latest time, and 4K has just come up, 12 minutes and 13. Here we are back with the lead. They've just gone through 4 kilometers, 12 minutes and 13, which actually is on course for just inside 2 hours 9 minutes. So that pace is fluctuating. TV Tower is doing us proud as a landmark, and indeed the Hamburg Expo. It's like rain in the air. You can see quite a few people still got some rain gear on, although I doubt very much whether they're going to wear that for the whole marathon. Once you get warmed up, my view is you don't need lots of clothing on. Your just body keeps you warm, and you're just sweating too much if you're wearing a rain top as well. It just doesn't make sense. Now then, back with men who are stripped and indeed not just ready for action, but in action. They'll be approaching 5 kilometers. This is the lead men's group. That is a classic Hamburg flag. It's the flag of HSV, the football club. I won't say the only football club, because there's also a St. Pauli FC. Keen rivals, and at times they've been in the Bundesliga, the top league. And on a day when Paula Radcliffe in London is running her last, it may not be a serious marathon, but she says proper marathon. And I think it's fair to say she was the one who started the trend, the fashion for the long socks going up to the knee. Look how many runners are wearing them. I've got an open mind about that. You read that it's supposed to help your circulation, or this, that, and the other. Could do. I've never worn them. On the other hand, when we do see shots of the elite men, the lead group, which is more or less, apart from our dear Mongolian national record holder Biwott, and probably, I would think, the Brazilian Marathon dos Santos, they're going to be all African. How many of them are wearing those long socks? I think we'll you can guess the answer. Although, I have to say, Mo Farah does wear those long socks. Certainly saw him this winter. Another aspect of the big city marathons and the marathons all over the world is raising money for charity. I've never seen quite that pot on wheels before. Just chuck it in, and it's usually runners running having collected pledges beforehand. Rain gear is out in action, so yes, they're getting an unexpected shower. Hamburg is renowned. It has very nice summers, but the winters can be rainy. Rain sweeps in off the North Sea. News of the men's race at 5 kilometers. That split was 15 minutes and 6 seconds, and they've just run their fastest split of fastest kilometer of the race, 2 minutes 54. So they're yo-yoing up and down, which is not helpful if they're looking for a fast time. But at the same time, I think it's fair to say we don't want to get too hooked on will it be a course record or not, because there's a lot more to distance running than just saying did they run a course record. And a noted American journalist, Tony Revis, if you read his blogs, etc., made the point this week that there's too much emphasis upon times in distance running and marathons these days. Anyway, now we're back with the elite. Let's have a chance to see them more in profile. The pacemakers doing their work, as they should be, part of their job, and it's a paid job as well. Batotchia in the red, slightly purple trim of Mongolia is there. Tall figure on the far side of the pack, Tesfaye Abera of Ethiopia. 1.92 tall, he's more like a high jumper. 209 man. Philemon Rono, a smaller figure just on the extreme right of your screen, slightly blocked there, is one to watch. He had a very strong run last year, finished third, and he's 207 performer. Also another to watch from once we get some close-ups, Mika Kogo, fellow Kenyan, who's run 206 for the marathon, but really his main claim to fame so far is that he used to be world record holder for 10 kilometers on the road, and very good shorter distance speed. Hasn't quite stamped his authority on the marathon yet. Okay, 206 is a pretty good time, but in terms of dominating. But it was interesting, and looking back on my travels around the circuit and being at this and that race, in Prague at the end of March, the half marathon there, we had Leonard Komon, who's world record holder at 10k, and he was saying how hard it was to switch, to move up to say the half marathon, because he found that with 5 and 10k he just went brum, you didn't have to think, whereas once you go into half marathon, let alone the marathon, and he made the point about he's run a decent marathon or two so far, but nothing fantastic. He said it's a different sport altogether. With 10k, you just get on the start line and you just hammer it, whereas you have to learn about conserving energy, or how you distribute your energy when you go into longer distances. Granite blocks and churches of Hamburg. It has quite a sober, business-like feel to it at times, Hamburg, especially the civil service, what the Germans call Beamtentum, which they are so fond of criticizing, to choose a polite word. But Hamburg also has its racier side and the rich cultural aspect as well. The local dialect, of course, just about everybody speaks what's called High German, but Plattdeutsch, Platt German is very distinctive indeed. Now, we've got pacers, a whole group of pacers, but two key men there, Johann Flügel and Stefan Ulitzka. Now, Flügel, Julian Flügel rather, in the red, just ahead of Ulitzka, did very well last year. He's got a best of 2:14.20. Was the best German performer. Ulitzka, as I was saying when we saw him on the start line, is going into the unknown. He's an international steeplechaser on the track for Germany. This is his first marathon. He has run a good half marathon, the build up to this. He ran 64 minutes 16 in Berlin to get inside the top 20. That was at the end of March. So everything has gone well so far for Stefan Ulitzka. They call those the crazy towers, and do not adjust your set. That is actually the architecture. So Julian Flügel in the red and Stefan Ulitzka do have pacemakers themselves to try and be aiming for, well, I would think certainly for both of them, 2 hours 15 or better. Information coming from our race computer, Mika timing, 7 kilometers, lead pack going through in exactly 21 minutes. That's some way ahead of this group. It has to be said that the German men's distance running in the marathon, not what it was. That's probably been said, and they're probably Flügel and Ulitzka probably getting tired of hearing it. But if we go back to the days of two separate Germanys, Waldemar Cierpinski winning 2 successive Olympic marathon titles in 1980, 84. However, at the same time, there's all the shadows of the state-sanctioned drug programs that the GDR has been shown to have. And indeed, it's not the GDR is the only guilty party in the shadowy world of performance-enhancing drugs. Far from it. An unfortunate aspect of modern athletics. I don't mean unfortunate that people try and uncover drug taking, but in terms of the way it's harmed the sport. As indeed we look at cycling and see what damage it's done to cycling. But Flügel and Ulitzka on the far side, moving well, moving quite smoothly, and keying off each other's stride and energy, looking nice and relaxed. Just news from the lead pack. I was giving you that split at 7 kilometers, exactly 21 minutes. But they've been going yo-yoing up and down the clock a bit. But leading contenders are all there. Fisa Belisa, the fastest man in the field, he's in there. Lukas Rotic, another contender. Philemon Rona, I was mentioning, was third last year. And also a Kenyan who comes from a city rather than the country, John Wangangi. He's in there. And in the women, we got the women's split at 5 kilometers, also courtesy of our track computer. Sylvia Kibet making her debut is well, at the forefront of a big group, as we'd expect at 5 kilometers. And that's in 17 minutes 25, which is just inside 2:27 finishing time. Or I think better to say finishing tempo, actually. A long way to go. And especially for these runners who are moving at a somewhat more sedate pace. Just to pick up that theme of the women's league group, while we're just seeing the mass runners and how they are toiling away. Apart from Sylvia Kibet, that world silver medalist on the track. Meseret Hailu, the world half marathon champion from Ethiopia. She is alongside her. So too is the Namibian record holder, Beata Naigambo. And the course record holder indeed from Ethiopia, Netsunet Abayo. And Japan's Yuko Watanabe, 2:26 performer, is also in there. And so too is Sabrina Mockenhart. So some pleasure for the home fans as well. Classic German, indeed, to think of it, Hamburg architecture, those houses. A nice smooth road for the two main men, Julian Flügel in the red and Stefan Ulitzka. Ulitzka, whose home club is in the Kiel area, so even more north than Hamburg, so he won't have had that far to travel. And our camera operator doing what has to be done when you have a drizzly day. It wasn't a runner. Sometimes you have to keep the lens clean. Oh, there's a fine gentleman, isn't there, in that yellow? And I'm just trying to read his T-shirt. Tokmak Brot. Well, a variety of bread which I have not sampled. But closely cropped man who looks a lot like Hugh Brasher, race director of London Marathon. I was somewhat amused, a little schadenfreude on my part, to see referred to as Chris Brasher in a UK Press article earlier this week. Of course, the late Chris Brasher, Hugh Brasher's father, co-founder with John Disley of the London Marathon, but now the race director is very much Hugh Brasher. TV, the effect of television, and it can be galling if one sees oneself in motion on film, is to make, shall we say, slower running look even slower. But these guys are going, and they're moving at a very solid pace. Two pacemakers up front, Alfred Cherop and Eliud Taurus. And also Nicholas Rotic, who's very experienced. Well, I say he's very experienced. Actually, he's 19, but he's packed a lot into his career so far. He is pace number 4. Oh, no, he's just behind the front rank of pacers. Each pacer is identified with pace 1, 2, 3, etc. Because on occasion they do get permission in some races to go on once they've done their pacemaking duties, could be taking the pack through to halfway in a certain time, or 30 or 35 kilometers, leaving the rest with 10 or 7 kilometers to run. They're then allowed to become racers, which sometimes can flummox and confuse others in the pack if they don't know that. Not quite at 10 kilometers yet, but they're getting close. They went through 9 kilometers in 27 minutes and 4 seconds. The last 3 K, they've been clocking just outside 3 minutes, so more consistent pacing, because before they were having a big margin of a big differential, which really hurts you. When you look at the overall pace, it may seem the same, but if you're going up and down in the gears, hard. On the right, Fiersa Bekele, fastest man in the field, 2:06.26. That's impressive going. He looks comfortable. Behind him, Philemon Rono did well last year. And Tesfaye Abera, tall Ethiopian in purple on the left. 2:09 performer, so he'll have to move into another level if he's going to match strides all the way to the finish beside the Expo against the likes of Fiersa Bekele, or indeed Philemon Rono. Sabrina Mockenhart with her own little group of pacers around her. Well, this is an important race for her. I'm sure she'd say any marathon she runs is important, but just wanted to see what kind of form she's in. Is she going to get selection for the World Championships in Beijing in August? And indeed, as the clock ticks, it's not that long before Rio and the Olympics next year. Every performance is significant. She's come back into better form, has to be said. Had a good run on the German roads in March after some disappointing performances in New York. Didn't do as she'd hoped in the half marathon there. Ten kilometres has been passed for the leading men, 30 minutes and 6 seconds. So that is a pretty useful time. They just crept inside 2 hours, 7 minutes in terms of that running tempo, 2:06.58. Pacemakers doing a good job. And now we're back with the Mocky group, the group around Sabrina Mockenhaupt. I'm not saying all of them are pacemakers. That it really would be it's a flotilla of escorts. But some of them are going to be in there, even if they're not wearing pace. I have a pretty fair hunch that they will be helping Mockenhaupt get a solid time in. Now her best is 2:26.21, 2 hours 26 minutes and 21. That came from finishing 4th in Berlin 5 years ago. Don't think she's going to be in that kind of shape, but we'll see. And Mockenhaupt is someone who's, with her vivacious personality, she's very articulate in press conferences. She makes a very good living, deservedly so. She may not be the very best of the runners, but getting into that, making the link between the mass runner and the elite and being personable and being available helps build a career as well. Slight descent, which will test their quadriceps, those upper thighs a little. Pacers are just reorganizing things. A slight difference between what I've got on our computer, Mika timing with the 10K. I had 30 minutes and 6 seconds, but anyway, we can see the gist of it. Mika Kogo, I was mentioning him as that former world record holder at 10 kilometers. He's in that pack as well. A reminder of the great seafaring tradition of Hamburg. You're never too far away from the water if you live in the Hansestadt. They make loping along at inside 2 hour 7 minute pace for the marathon look like a training run. Now, in some ways, their training runs can move up and up into this kind of level, but it really is never ceases to impress me. They can just look so relaxed, and of course so much training and talent goes into looking relaxed like that. Since they've gone through 10 kilometers, they'll be heading towards the fish market, which is why we're getting the aerial shots of the sea. I don't think there'll be too much fish on sale on the Sunday morning. And anyway, the fish market always opens much earlier even than the start time for the marathon. Well, they've had that slight decline, that little drop. Meantime, they're back in there. We can just see some of the other names there. A brief glimpse at the back of a debutant at the marathon, Unegno Mesfin of Ethiopia. And that is Landungsbrücken, where there used to be a ferry from the UK to Hamburg. I used to catch the ferry there, the overnight trip. Well, there's a brief glimpse of one of our NDR television colleagues. Whatever he was going to say, I'll just have to imagine. And what I was going to say was that when we saw that close-up of the group, that reminded me of having done some research, and John Mwangangi we saw there. So got a familiar tale that he began international running life as a pacemaker, as indeed we've seen in this race, those runners at the very front. And then he impressed enough that it was viewed as a promotion. He was then allowed to race, be an out-and-out racer, and that's what he's done. And indeed, he's got a bronze from the World Half Marathon Championships. Mwangangi, well, he'll be wearing 6 on his back. And there he is, just second from the left, not the tallest of figures, with his name on the front bib. Stephen Chebogot, right at the back, more or less level with that tall Ethiopian. And ignore Mesfin. And then wearing 10, Gideon Kipchoge, who's coached by a really influential Kenyan, and a lot of the Kenyans have foreign coaches, but William Kiplagat, as our cameraman colleague, yet again pays attention to the housekeeping details. William Kiplagat, who's as a man in his late 30s, has run formidably well. He's run 2:06. I've seen him do that in Frankfurt, but he also coaches, and he's been coaching quite a few Kenyans, really bringing them on. And Stephen Chebogot is one of them. Yeah, that is the famous Landungsbrücken, those green domes. Now, Haile Meseret, former World Half Marathon champion in that red kit. And this is the lead group for the women, with quite a few pacemakers. Again, they've got designated pacemakers. After Landungsbrücken, we're moving in terms of sites, moving towards the port city, which is a construction, big construction, which is complete. Well, there's still work going on, but most of it was complete about 7 years ago. A feature of modern Hamburg. Meantime, Julian Flügel, wearing the red vest on alongside Stefano Litzkos in that kind of purpley bluish kit. They seem to be still going pretty well. The lead men are through 12 kilometers now, or 13 in fact, 39.06. But let's take a look at Meseret Haile. There's been talk that in the build-up for Hamburg she had a few injury problems, so may not be at her strongest. She is by some way the fastest in this field. Interesting though, looking pretty smooth, Sylvia Kibet of Kenya. This is her first ever marathon, but she has a prestigious career behind her. 4th place in the Olympic Games at 5,000 meters. That was in Beijing 7 years ago. A lot of success on the track. I was talking about the building work that's gone on in Hamburg recently. This is the Elbphilharmonie. The Elbphilharmonia, the River Elbe, of course, part of the lifeblood, the economic lifeblood of Hamburg over the centuries. Well, some very distinctive architecture. Interesting architecture as well. I have to say I'm more familiar with the Berlin Philharmonia. Of course, talking about links between Hamburg and Britain, links between Berlin and Britain. Musical links. Sir Simon Rattle has recently left the Berlin Philharmonia to return to Britain as conductor. Could almost look like a ship. I'll go with that as modern architecture. I like that. An interesting colour scheme as well. The blue, the pink. It looks like a ship or the waves of the ocean. Though, as I don't have any head for heights, good luck to whoever is driving those cranes. Much better down on the road, where we have the lead women's group. Meseret Haile of Ethiopia wearing the red. Sylvia Kibet looking pretty comfortable, the marathon debutante. The posse of men out there, and of course, with the women having the ability to run low 220s, these are pretty decent standard men who are in there, and not all pacemakers. They're going for their own chunk of glory. Nagambo of Namibia, the national record holder, she's in that blue kit. One thing, if you have a race near water, you often find that a wind can come off the sea, and as I say, it is a port, so that can be a factor. But so far, I was looking at those pictures, it's not a windy day. It's still pretty cool, fairly high humidity. It's like drizzle in the air. And Sabrina Mockenholt, she really does have an escort there. It is a difference between this and the championship races, and I think some runners, both men and women, when they come to championships and they don't get paced, they lose it. They actually literally do not know what to do. They're so used to going into marathons where, especially for the women, they're used to having a whole pack around her. So yeah, they've got to be very fit, and they've got to do the training, and they've got to have the talent, etc. But in a way, they've got to follow someone. Then you get into a championship race, or a race, for example, like Boston, which makes a lot of the fact that that race does not have pacemakers. And you have to not only do the running, but you have to do the thinking. And you have to do the thinking in a different way. And if you've run at any kind of level, even my level, and had to think about, is this the right tempo I'm going, and how's it going? Should I try a little harder? Can I catch the person in front of me or not? You've got to work that out, and you're working it out when you are running, if not quite at your limit, you are really working. You're pushing yourself, because that's what a race is. That adds a completely different aspect to competition, as opposed to being in a group, and if you can follow the lead, that's what you do. Now back with the lead men. Time to give you a little time check. We're at 14 kilometres, 42 minutes 21. That's slowed slightly because that last kilometre was 3 minutes and 15. So they're in mid 2 hours, 7 minutes 30 running time. But they've been going up and down a lot. I think we're going to not be having course records, but we're going to have an interesting competition because that pack has stayed more or less together. There haven't been well, I haven't seen any drop-off. So in terms of the men, Fisa Bekele, Philemon Rono, they're all in there. Mika Kogo as well. And we'll very shortly be having the split for the men at 15 kilometres. Naturally enough, our host broadcaster keen to show what Sabrina Mockenholt is doing in the marathon. She had a keen rivalry with the woman who is now retired but is still national record holder in the marathon, Irina Mikitenko. It was called the Moki and Miki show in terms of the usually pretty good-natured rivalry. Mockenhart has had good results, but has never had the results that Mikitenko had, running 2:19, the only German woman to run below 2 hours 20 for the marathon. And indeed, Mikitenko winning Berlin, winning London a couple of times. Outstanding performances. Well, I said Hamburg was a port, and that's a big, big reminder. Container ships, I think that's what they're called. Meant the demise of the trade of being a docker, and just lifted them out and put them back in again. Sounds simple, doesn't it? Probably not as simple as I made it sound. And certainly running inside 2 hours 30, running mid 2:20s is not simple either, and that's what this group is trying to do, with Sabrina Mockenhart right in there. Just to give you a feel for what the lead women's situation was at 10 kilometres, going back a bit in time. This big group together, they went through 10 kilometres in 34 minutes 38. 34:38, which is sort of tempo of just outside 2 hours 26. And yeah, looking there, Meseret Hailu, Silvia Kibet, and the Namibian record holder Beata Naingambo were in there. Slightly drifting off that lead women's pace at 10k was the Japanese Yuko Watanabe. And Sabrina Mockenhart, we're seeing a lot of her at 10 kilometres, was a minute, just over a minute behind the leading women. Now the men at 15 kilometres, they've gone through in 45 minutes 20. Oh, what's that little sign that group was breaking up? No, I think it's just pacemakers having a conversation with each other. And at least 10 men in there, including our friend, or my friend indeed, the Mongolian record holder Batot Chia. He's well in there. 4 pacemakers and 6 racers. That is if none of the pacemakers decide to continue and be racers. Now again, I have to say there's a slight discrepancy of 4 seconds between what we're getting on our screens for the timing splits and the Mika timing, but well, I'll keep giving you the Mika timing and then we'll see at the finish. But in terms of contenders, everyone who we thought would matter is in there. Philemon Rono, last year's 3rd placer. Faisa Bekele is looking pretty good. He's just behind pace number 4. Pacer number 4. Front 2 pacers, well, on the right, pacer 2 is Titus Komen. Kind of jockeying around for position quite a lot. And Titus Komen, the tall figure in red, it seems to be one who's giving the orders, saying, you move there, you move there. Philemon Rono just slotting in behind. He's rather shorter than some of the others, and that's a factor. If you're shorter, you can get behind the big guys, get shelter from the wind. Nice story about Philemon Rono. He's just about, well, a second, 2 or 3 from the right of your picture. He went to police college, so he's a policeman. What happens often is that they go and do the police training, and they may be very good runners at the time, but they just have to slacken back a little on their police training. And he's qualified, he's trained as a police officer, and perhaps he's not doing all the duties they normally would do, but when his running career is over, he'd revert to full-time police work. But because of his stature, diminutive stature, his colleagues there at the college nicknamed him Baby Police. I think that's rather sweet. So Philemon Rono, very good runner, but Baby Police amongst his fellow officers. Pacemakers certainly doing their work, keeping it going at a good pace, although just that earlier irregular pace didn't do the main pack any favours. Oh, isn't that an artistic sight indeed? Now the lead women. Well, one man, and I said everybody we've talked about or thought about pre-race is in that lead group. I have to say, qualify that and say one man not in that lead group is the Brazilian Marathon dos Santos, who said beforehand he was using this race really to put a marker down in terms of selection for the Olympics, which of course will be on his home patch in Rio next year. But dos Santos, who's been around quite a while, he's 37 now, and has produced good results throughout that time. Not only the couple of New York wins, first South American to win the New York Marathon title, but also when I thought his career might be fading, he came back and he ran very well in London. Finished 4th, but that was 4 years ago. And I just wonder whether Marathon dos Santos may have just slipped past his peak, because he's certainly not in that group. The one non-African right in the middle is Batochia of Mongolia. A hardy and rugged breed, the Mongolians, as you've studied history. The exploits and deeds of Genghis Khan will tell us. The cyclist in the green top behind the running group, fear not, or the two of them in green tops. They're not interlopers, they're not going to disrupt the race, they're race officials, and these days the current fashion is to have, we see the motorcycle riders with the camera crews, but they're just making sure everything flows smoothly. Because when I was talking about Marathon dos Santos, and the fact the Brazilian is not in the race, I also flashed into my mind the memory of the 2004 marathon in the Athens Olympics, when van der Leijden de Lima, at around, what, 30-something kilometers, was leading, looked like he was going to win the title for Brazil, and has to be called a crazy character who had form in this respect. Cornelius Horan, Irish guy, jumped out from the spectators and tried to attack van der Leijden de Lima, or at least draw attention to himself, and he'd done that in the British Formula One, running onto the circuit the previous year. So he had a history of trying to get himself in the frame, in the picture. And van der Leijden de Lima lost around 20 seconds, and he went from first to, actually did in the end get the bronze medal, but it was understandably very unfortunate for de Lima. So nothing like that happening here, and fortunately those officials on the bikes are there to help it, to prevent it. Now, a little more up close with the leading women. Meseret Hailu, Sylvia Kibet on her far side. Gambo of Namibia just behind them. Sylvia Kibet does look very smooth. They're saying this is her debut. So really 5,000 meters, her best distance. So she has run in the build-up to this debut. Very good half marathon. And Kibet ran 69 minutes 32, 1st of March. And that was at a race which is often an indicator of who's going to be informed for the spring marathons. That was in Italy, the Ostia Marathon. So 69.32, that really puts her in with an excellent chance of doing very well. But a half marathon, well, the name suggests, yes, it's half the distance, but I really think, and I'm far from being the only one, that full marathon is much more. What the body goes through is much more than twice half a marathon. Just as when you have people who only look at the stats and saying, well, this runner has run X at 5 or 10,000 meters, therefore they should be able to run for a marathon. That overlooks several factors. Mental attitude, can you cope with it? Can you cope with the training for the marathon and the marathon itself, the difference there, and also physiological. You may have a great engine for the shorter, longer distances, if I can call that, but something may happen when you come to the marathon and you just don't excel in the way that somebody else might, and you don't know until you get there. It's not just about mathematics. Staffel. Now that is not somebody called Herr Staffel or Mr. Staffel. That is someone who's gone past like a bat out of hell, past the lead women's group. That gentleman is running in the relay race, so that may be why he has such fresh legs. There are 4 runners per team, and mind you, he does look a pretty good runner. So how many women in that lead group? I'm looking at 3 so far. I think 3 is the correct number. Mesret Hailu, Sylvia Kibet, and Beatrice Nagambo. Beate Nagambo, I should say, of Namibia. Sylvia Kibet certainly has good genes if we're talking about potential for running. She's a cousin of a very fine Kenyan runner, Lorna Kiplagat, who's now more focusing her energies on helping other younger runners develop. Indeed, there's a Lorna Kiplagat Sports Centre where runners have gone to train in Kenya. Olitska, and then just ahead of him, Julian Flugel. Now, I think Olitska, knowing that Flugel's got a best of 2 hours 14, and I would think that Stefan Olitska would be very happy with that kind of time on debut in the marathon. If he can stick with him, then he's got an excellent chance of achieving that objective. The leading men, just further up the field, have gone through 19 kilometres in 57 minutes 31. The kilometre split's more consistent now. They're on or just outside 3 minutes. And that's a running tempo of 2 hours, 7 minutes and 42. So a little way inside 2:08. Litska, though, just starting to drop, just starting to fade a little from Julian Flugel. And he's got to make up that ground. That's going to be very hard. If he starts losing more ground, it's psychological as well as knowing, well, I'm 5 meters. You're just in the middle of nowhere. You're in the middle of nowhere, and you've got more than half the race to go. Meantime, the handbikers are really in action. The first outcome of the day. And the handbike victory. And that should be a pretty fast time. I'm just looking at the the clock, which I have to say is unofficial clock that I've been running, well, a few seconds outside the hour for that gentleman in the handbike. Sabrina Mockenhout. And she slipped a little further behind the leading group, which in one sense is probably not her plan anyway, to be up there with them. If there are women running 2:24, she may not feel she's in quite that shape. So she's now just over a minute and a half behind, and that is at 15 kilometers. They've gone through 15 kilometers. The women going through 15K in 51:58, which is 2 hours, 26 minutes, 11 seconds tempo. Mockenhout, well, she's on course for just outside 2:30. So even though this is a range finder for Mockenhout, I think she would like certainly to be inside 2:30. Others who have slipped off the pace, well, the Japanese Yuko Watanabe, who was earlier amongst the lead group, she's now a minute and 12 seconds behind on a time which would get her in just inside 2 hours 30. But certainly in the women, it's the three of them, Meseret Hailu, Sylvia Kibet and Beata Naigambo. And that gap is widening for Stefano Lutska. This is looking rough for him. He's got to summon up all the reserves he has. And he definitely has them as an international runner. And gut it. No other word for it. Just gut it. This is what he's prepared for. When you come to the marathon, you have to accept it's a different discipline. It's a different race to anything you've done before. All that training, the speed work, I'm sure as a youngster, he was moving up the distances, running for his club. And then he established his spot on the national team as a steeplechaser. Well, that's 3,000 meters. And tough as well, because you've got 28 barriers. And you'll be doing longer runs to prepare for that as well as speed work. But this is a different planet. Still, Mockenhout continues. Yuko Watanabe, first time we've had a clear view of her, saying that she was, this is at 15 kilometers. She was a minute 12 behind. She's actually slipped further behind because she's clearly in the same group as Mockenhout, but a few places down. Nice to see that quite a few of these runners are wearing their club vests, a fashion which has waned in the last, well, 20 years or so, when the first marathon boom came in the 1970s, and you started getting races where there were several thousand entered. You would see all the different club vests, and it was really like a medieval pageant of men and women that you'd run against in cross-country and shorter race races. Suddenly you'd see them in races and as an ordinary runner you think, wow, we're on TV, and it was very nice to see the club vest. But I suppose the commercialism, understandably, that's changed the picture. So Watanabe not having a great run. She's come back into better form. She had excellent performances earlier in her career. A couple of years ago she ran 2:25 and finished third in Osaka in Japan, which is one of their top marathons, indeed a leading marathon around the world. But last year she had injury problems, and it looks like she's struggling a little now to hold on to that group. We're talking about commercial aspects. Of course, in Japan, distance running is very popular, and very popular with the big corporations and national TV, and they love their Ekiden relays. We've got a relay in here. We've got 6,000 people taking part in a 4-person marathon relay, chopping up the marathon into those 4 parts. But in Japan, the relays with top corporate teams, many Africans, Kenyans especially, involved to get recruited. Some of them go to school in Japan and college or work for the corporation, but they're also hired for their running prowess, and that's a big aspect for the strength in depth in Japan. Indeed, Batochir, our Mongolian national record holder, he spent time in Japan and done very well there. His best over 2 hours, 8 minutes was run in Fukuoka. Again, one of the great marathons of the world, Fukuoka. And there we have, at half marathon point. Now, this is the TV caption. And I'm just going to check on what our Mika timing has given us. Well, 63:48 for the Mika timing. For the moment, I'm going to go with that. No changes that I could see in that group. So, more or less covered by 1 second. In fact, all that group. Faisa Bekele, who's the fastest man in the field this year, 2:06 performer. He's in there. So too Philemon Rono, who was 3rd in Hamburg last year. Lukas Rotic. One man who's not there. Mika Kogo. That's interesting. Kogo's not in that lead group. And just struggling to stay in there is when they ignore Mesvin, who's making his marathon debut. That looks significant as well, because when you start losing, it's just like further down the field, you've got Stefan Olitska, who's dropped off the little group, which has Julian Flügel, his fellow German. Olitska's going to be struggling, seeing that gap develop, and it's the same for Mesvin. We're in the area of the Ulster Lake, one of the glories of Hamburg, the Ulster Lake, and some very nice houses around here. Nice running around the lake as well. Many of the embassies have their homes here. It is what we say in British terms, quite posh. And that's just part of the Ulster Lake.
Und genau das sind die stimmungsvollen Bilder an den großen Mizuno-Bogen. Die Stadt ist auf den Beinen, Jared. 600 bis 800.000.
The on-site announcer doing his best to encourage the thousands of runners. 19,500 was the total we had before the gun went off, and they're all out there giving their best. Interesting sailors' uniforms. And this is part of the area I mentioned, the Landungsbrücken. A feature of modern marathon running, the mass participation event, is you see all shapes and sizes involved. There's some that look more like heavyweight boxers, as well as the more traditional stripped down elfin distance runner. Denmark well represented. It's only a short hop from one Nordic country to a Nordic city in Hamburg. Indeed, linguistically, when you hear the Hamburg accent, it can sound very much like some of the other Nordic languages. And the course takes them towards the Stadtpark, the city park. That's the edge of the picture, the track there. Hamburg has a lot of excellent running tracks as well. Often schools have their own running track. That really is splendid. The running track with a football pitch in the middle. Now back to the sharp end. And the men having gone through halfway. It's coming off the back there, Jackson Lemo. Mika Kogo, well, I said I thought he was out of it, but there he is. He's got number 3 on his back, and number 1 on his back is Fisa Bekele. But Kogo is in there. I have to apologise because it wasn't shown on our computer with the timing splits. The women also making their way around the Ulster. Tennis courts also very popular. There we are. Tennis courts, football pitches, running tracks. That's how you can spend a Sunday afternoon in Hamburg. Now Jackson Lemo and Hunig Nor Mesfin. Mesfin has done well because he was really dropping off the back. Now he's dropping, how I say that, he's dropping a stride or two behind, but he got back into contact. John Wangangi, the diminutive figure, the baby policeman, as his colleagues say. He's a little toughie, he's just hanging in there at the rear, but there's a sense perhaps that group is splitting. Pacemakers continue to do a solid job now after some early irregularities. Philemon Rono, 3rd place last year, and he's just cruising along looking very relaxed. Tall figure of Tesfaye Berra. There's four men behind the 2 pacemakers. There we are at 25 kilometers. They've completed, well, half a tour of the Ulster Lake, and now coming off that. And it's still a long way as they begin to head for home. Batoche is looking strong. Just doing well to avoid a heel. He's been slotting along next to Fisa Bekele throughout the race and looking very confident. Elite runners tend to have their water bottles with their own special mixtures flagged, so they're delivered after the technical meeting. This is usually the evening before the race, but some can also just pick up a water bottle or a cup of water. It really depends on what's available and what arrangements the event makes. But these days, when there's so much concern about drug testing and not drinking something which you don't know the contents of, they do tend to go for the bottles where they know exactly what is in them. So Mockenhart. Pacers look happy. Pacers feel as if they're doing a good job. Just a question of whether she can get inside 2 hours 30. I think her father's record, she mentioned her father quite a few years ago had run in Hamburg and holds the family record. 2 hours, 24 minutes and 59 seconds. Well, that's faster than she's ever run, and she's certainly not going to break that in this run in Hamburg. One of the famous German beers there. Seeing that, advertising its alcohol-free variety. Mockenhaupt is maintaining a good rhythm. I think it probably a case of she's coming back into form. Maybe this race is a little too soon for her. If she puts in a decent performance, it may well be that if she wants to go to Beijing and run the World Championships, the German selectors will say, yes, okay, fine, because they are not spoilt for choice necessarily. While the German women, thanks to the now retired Irina Mikitenko, have had more success in recent years on the international front, they still don't have that many women who are going to be running, well, faster than Mockenhaupt, faster than her best of 2:26. Men's league group go striding on. Let's try and catch up for the split at 25 kilometers. Now they went through 25k in 1 hour, 15 minutes and 36 seconds. Pacemakers continue at the front. I've been saying that quite a lot, but that's what they've been doing all through this race. We haven't seen a single non-pacemaker, non-designated pacer at the front. So the likes of that little figure, Philemon Rono behind him, Abera, a taller Ethiopian, they've all been cruising along, providing they can stay in that pack. Then those pacemakers will take them through to, well, when I say decisive moments, so often in the marathon, 35k really is what really counts. Gideon Kipketer, one to watch, 2:08 man. And then Stephen Kibet also in that similar performance range. And Kogo, just a little further back, but looking very smooth. It's going to be very interesting to see what he does here. Olympic bronze medalist on the track at 10,000. And he says that last year, because he ran both Boston and New York, that he overtrained because he was way outside the top 10 in both races. And they're two of the prime marathons of the year. So after making a good impression on a marathon in 2:06, he learnt more about the suffering end. But he has come back into good form in late March. He was second runner-up in the Lisbon half marathon, which is always a high quality race. And he ran 59 minutes 33 there. So that is good going. Good going indeed. Now, some runners benefit from having a few hills. There are runners who don't, from what I've seen, adapt well to having a long, smooth path all the way. And while Hamburg is not pancake flat, it's not like a Dubai Marathon in January, which is it's just like a Formula One racetrack. It's almost like an out, back, on your marks, get set, vroom, turn, and then that's it. And that's why they run so fast there. But some runners get momentum coming off the hills, attacking the hills, coming down them. And others are just very happy with the flat. Mind you, all these men, rest assured, will have trained on the hills. Hills make runners. Very simple. And whatever level, if you're a mass runner, you gain enormously, not only from doing hill repetitions, but just running over hilly courses. A simple phrase I read many years ago, someone said it's speed work in disguise. Now, Mwangi, John Mwangangi, number 6, is he fading? Well, our cameraman operator is assiduous in his attention to duty, because every so often when we get a little close-up shot there, his or her, I mustn't be gender biased here, could well be her, a big hand comes, but there we go. We've got a few. I think we can live with a few drops on the camera lens, can't we? Rather have a close-up of the lead pack. There's Wangangi, who is fading a little. And behind him, Mika Kogo. And the man wearing number 8, Stephen Chebogot, I was saying, was coached by that very good veteran runner, William Kiplagat. Oh, we are getting more drizzle. It's clear from the camera lens. But so far, it shouldn't be hindering the runners at all. It's nothing like strong enough, because I think you only get to rain which is going to hinder, really be a problem if you see it and it's bouncing up off the tarmac. But there is Sabrina Mockenhart with we're calling it a flotilla, more like an armada of runners around her. Currently at around 2 hours 30 pace. Let's just check on the women's half marathon split. Just going back, 1 hour 13 minutes and 1 second. And the top 3, Hailu, Kibet and Naigambo, still in that group. They comprise the lead group plus the pacers. Meantime, back with the men. Titus Common, who's pacer number 2, really seems to be the boss man here. Through the race, he's been just indicating with a hand, just you move here, you move there. He's marshalling that lead group. Approaching City North and the Ohlsdorf area, which is the northernmost part of the race. Fisa Bekele, who's shorter, got a, shall we say, more Ethiopian hairstyle, more Not quite the close-cropped Kenyan razor cut. Middle of that pack. And his marathon career has really developed the last 3 years. And as I say, his personal best is a 2:06.26 from 4th place in Amsterdam. But he's also won, in terms of his victories, well, he started off by winning in Annecy in France. That was 3 years ago. And then last year, in fact, not so long ago, last November, Faisa Bekele won the Jong-Ah Seoul Marathon. Now, there are 2 races, 2 marathons in Seoul each year. There's the Seoul Marathon and there's the Jong-Ah. So he won the Jong-Ah. That's held in November. And that showed after a little while of hamstring problems, leg injuries he had. That showed that he was back into form, run 2:07 there. So that's Bekele kind of in the middle. He's got more, well, he's got more hair than some of the Kenyans, the Ethiopian there. She's over 2 minutes behind the leading trio of the women. She's, mind you, she's still on course for just outside 2:30. The leading trio, that's Meseret Hailu, Sylvia Kibet and Beata Ngambo. They picked up the pace. So their running time now, they're on a just inside 2:26, high 2:25s tempo. And they're all together. The next challenger in the women is almost a minute and a half behind. That's the Russian Alina Prokopeva. And then we've got the Lithuanian record holder, Diana Lobachevska. And she's, again, just over a minute and a half behind the leading trio in the women's race. Two pacemakers in the Mockenhaupt group, I think we should call them that. From the Netherlands, Hugo van den Broek, and from Italy, Alberto Mosca. So the others in that group are racers out to run their best rather than assist Mockenhaupt. Titus Komen and Eliud Taros there at the front. Komen in the red vest, he certainly looks strong. I wonder if he's got a dispensation to to run all the way to the finish. He's certainly dictating how the pacing should go. Look at him going through there. They've gone through 30 kilometres. Well, just as I says that, the day's work for Titus Komen is at an end, but he's done, on the whole, a pretty decent job of pacemaking. And in terms of the man setting the tempo, it's all down to the rather more diminutive figure at the front of Eliud Taros. Looking strong there on the right hand of the picture, the racers, pure and simple. Gideon Kipketer is putting in a good effort. I was mentioning Faisa Bekele having run his fastest marathon in Amsterdam. A lot of these runners are looking through the start list in preparation for this commentary. You see Amsterdam cropping up. Well, many of them are managed by the Global Sports Communications Group, which is headed by Jos Hermans, a former world record holder indeed, as a runner back in the 70s, and the Dutch manager looks after the careers of athletes like Haile Gebrselassie, Kenisa Bekele, many Africans. And Amsterdam, he also helps organize the elite fields of Amsterdam as well as Hamburg. So that may be a clue to why so many of you see the link between a runner who's run in Amsterdam and then he's also run, or she, in Hamburg. Eliud now, all the expectation upon him keeping the pace going. They're running at around 2 hours, 7 minutes, 30 odd tempo, which is a very decent time. But that group, it's going to be very interesting to see how it goes, because, okay, you've got Fisa Bekele, but it's not a big name group. Men in that group have something to prove. If they can win here, whoever wins here, and it's a good time, then boosts by quite a way their marketability on the marathon circuit. So their managers can ask for, in some cases, perhaps bigger fees, or they just get entry into races where there's more prize money. So all this is a significant morning for them. Lead women's group, Meseret Hailu, well, just about a stride ahead of Sylvia Kibet and Beata Naigambo. That's where they've been for so much of this race. It really does look as if the podium places between these three women, just a question of what the order will be. However, a great deal can happen because they're still short of 30 kilometers. And that means 12, 13 kilometers still to run. But in terms of the nearest challengers, down the road, the Russian Alina Prokopyeva is a minute and a half behind, and just behind her is the Lithuanian record holder, Diana Lobachevsky. More in contention in the men's lead group. And Wangi's hung in there to stay with them. Chebogot, Mika Kogo. This looks very smooth. And Berhe Aregawi, who's a 2 hours 15 runner. A man with a little strapping on his left knee. So he's performing at a much higher level than we'd expect. Kipchoge nearest the camera. Then Lukas Rotic, who was 8th last year. Then we had a brief view of a teenager. I'm sure we'll see more of him. Guilherme Ghebreselassie, no relation to Haile. There is a slight figure, a little more hair than most on the far side. Ethiopian Ghebreselassie, famous name, but definitely no relation to Haile. And date of birth says he's 19, and he's already run 2 hours 9 for the marathon. And in fact, he's an Eritrean. So, as is Aregawi, who's just a stride behind him. Not so similar in appearance, just behind him. The taller figure right in the middle is from Ethiopia, Tesfaye Abera, another 209 performer. So what have we got? We've got, at first we've got a bit of vertigo from that camera angle, but I'm sure we'll be rejoining the men's lead pack shortly. Chance to look at the women's trio. Game of chess on legs. Now, in terms of lifetime performances, we've got a Meseret Hailu in the red. Well, she's run 2:21, and there's a difference of 3 to 4 minutes between her rivals here. Alongside her, Sylvia Kibet hasn't run a marathon, and then Beata Naigambo has run, in fact, 2:27. 2:27.54 is her own Namibian marathon record. She's had a good career. With, Commonwealth Games bronze medal 5 years ago. That's Naigambo of Namibia. Sometimes just water will do. And when you're running at that kind of tempo, you can't take in a lot of water. You just do it. I can recall hearing Arne Gabius, a very good German runner who made his debut in Frankfurt at the marathon and ran well last year, ran 2:09. That was a big, big story. And he said he hardly drank at all. But it's different from person to person. Now we're getting a little more close up. Guilherme Gebrselassie, this 19-year-old from Eritrea. The two Eritreans, Aragawe and Gebrselassie, in this lead group. And Gideon Kipchoge. All these men are running at, in terms of time tempo, well above their lifetime best. That is, with one exception, Philemon Rono, two of them, Philemon Rono and Mika Kogo. But the others, you've got this Aragawe from Eritrea, run 2:15. Big differences. Well, through more suburban aspects of Hamburg, there's still some spectators out there. It's nice, almost like impromptu little family feeding tables. I would think they're for competitors known to them who's going to be passing through here sometime later. But this is about competition, red in tooth and claw. First prize, €20,000. Second prize, 15. Third prize, 10,000. That's the same for men's and women's. And that kind of prize money can change your life if you're coming from Kenya or Ethiopia or Eritrea. .30 kilometers for the men, and they've gone through that in 1 hour 30 minutes and through 1 hour 30 minutes and 43 seconds. That's come up 1:30:43. Now, who's going to be taking this? It's the feel of coming to that decisive point in the race. I was mentioning between 30 and 35k. This is where, metaphorically at least, the gloves start coming off. And Gideon Kipchoge is looking strong, running stride for stride with Eliud Taras. But this 19-year-old Eritrean, Guilherme Gebrselassie, right in the middle of that pack now, looks very confident. That split at 30 kilometers, the 1:30:43. They're running as before, mid 2:07 pace, 2:07:30. Sabrina Mockenhart with the gap. Just looking at our computer. Well, she's in 8th place. And still a little over 2 minutes behind the leading trio. Not quite a day for sunglasses, although it is said amongst the commercial aspects of how you earn a living as an elite runner. There's a sponsorship for sunglasses, so there's some athletes that you never see without their sunglasses, no matter what the weather. And if it's like today, well, they just stick them up top, but they're still wearing this part of their sponsor's kit. And indeed, Mockenhaupt, as I was mentioning earlier, was at the start of the race, her very personable manner and articulacy means that I'm sure she has a long-term deal with her kit sponsor, which may well go on beyond her international career, just as Paula Radcliffe, as she's running her last ever marathon in London this same morning. I'm sure her kit sponsor and other sponsors definitely see her as someone that they'd like to have representing them for many years to come. And she's already involved in media work for the BBC as one of their commentators team, and many other roles as well. Also, their schemes just started from mentoring young athletes involved with UK athletics, all sorts of things. So for those who do really succeed, and it has to be said, have that kind of personality where they're outgoing and they're happy to talk to people and have contact, because fair enough, not everybody wants to do that when they're competing as an athlete, then there can be rewards well after your peak running years have gone. Now, for Mockenhaupt, indeed, that group has broken up, or just down to the designated 2 pacemakers. More of her in a moment, because we're back at the sharp end of the men's race. Eliud Taras is there, and the bigger man is that Gideon Kipchoge, who's not down as a pacemaker. Well, perhaps I get a better idea. I have to say, I can't quite identify Kipchoge for sure, but I think it's him, with Taras just fractionally in front of him. Taras, who is wearing a bib denoting that he's a pacer. Oh, that was almost like a flashback in video quality to another time, another place. But anyway, be that as it may, something of almost like a long drag, a little hill for that lead men's group, and Mockenhaupt with her 2 pacemakers, Hugo van der Broek and Alberto Mosca. And just thinking of 12 years ago to this day, in London, the women's world record in a mixed race. And there we have Sabine Mockenhaupt running in a mixed race with a couple of pacemakers when Paula Radcliffe smashed the world record run. What still stands for a mixed race, 2 hours, 15 minutes and 25 seconds. I think it still will be a long time before that record is broken. Really do. This is the hard yards, to borrow from another sport. This is really where it's tough, even for the elite. And I think Mockenhaupt's face is showing that she's finding this an effort. Well, she's got through to 30 kilometres, so I wouldn't say not far to go now, but she knows, as the tough international competitor she is, she can finish. But Stefan Olitska, that doesn't look good. You know, for the son of an international runner, Olitska looks in trouble. He was drifted off the back. He was looking good, running with Julian Flügel, who finished here last year around 2:14. And now, well, the camera doesn't tell us if you've got any other runners with him, but he's struggling. And I wonder whether he's going to be finishing, because that really does look tough. he's heating up a lot. The redness in his face. I know his colouring, his fair colouring, will make that even more distinctive. But when you see that in somebody who's international level, you think, and they've got what, another 12, 13 kilometres to run. Not sure if they're going to make it. And then there's the question of, well, what's going through his head? I don't want to be a mind reader, but if you finish and say, well, I finished, but if you finish 10 minutes or so outside what you hope for as a time, is that going to bash your body, or is it going to make you feel, well, at least I finished? Only Olitska can decide. Meantime, in terms of decisions, this is getting very interesting. A trio away. And that's what TV captions are showing at 35 kilometres. We had a slight second or two discrepancy, but Lukas Rotic, Girmay Gebrselassie and Philemon Rono. But certainly the Eritrean Girmay Gebrselassie in the middle of that trio. But a real push is coming on now. Well, Philemon Rono is definitely getting dropped there behind Girmay Gebrselassie. But we'll rejoin the men shortly. We're still seeing the progress of Sabrina Mockenhout. Mockenhout is moving up through that field now. That was interesting. The woman she overtook was the Russian Alina Prokopyeva. So she is moving up. Well, she's looking solid. I know I'm saying that she's having to work hard, but anybody does at this stage in the race. Prokopyeva, the Russian, was back in 5th place, right? So she was 4th, and then Prokopyeva, the Russian, was overtaken, has been overtaken by the Lithuanian, Diana Lovachevska. And that could be the next target for Sabrina Mockenhout. In the meantime, we've got Lukas Rotic out in front. No more pacemakers. Eliud Taras's presence is no longer with us. It's Lukas Rotic and the young Eritrean Girmay Gebrselassie. They've dropped Philemon Rono.
Die Führungsfahrzeuge 1:51:42, der BMW i3 emissionsfrei.
This could be fascinating. The experience of the Kenyan, Lukas Rotic. Girmay Gebrselassie from Eritrea, this talented teenager. Philemon Rono still in there, and so is Stephen Chebogot. That angle perhaps a little deceptive, but they can still... The key thing is, if you can still see the men in front, you feel you have a chance. Slightly disheartening when you have a timing car in between, but you feel, right, still got them. 1:51 on the clock. It's not over yet. Well, that head-on shot was very instructive. The aerials are nice, but when we go head-on, we certainly see how the race is unfolding. Here we are back on ground level. Lukas Rotic is looking good, no doubt about it. He's looking strong, and you're confident. If you go into the lead at that kind of at this kind of stage in the race. And talking about the connection with the manager Jos Hermans, who creates the fields, or many of the fields, for Amsterdam and Hamburg. Well, Lukas Rotic was second in Amsterdam last year, and Amsterdam is a fast race, held in October. Sometimes it's pretty windy, but as you'd expect from the Netherlands, not hilly. So Rotic with a best of 2:07.18. So he knows what it's like to run at strong tempo, and they're on that kind of, well, slightly slower, but they're on a 2:07, mid 2:07s course. But the fascinating aspect is this Eritrean who's right behind him, Girmay Gebrselassie, the man wearing number 14. Well, his date of birth shows that he's 19. And last year he ran Chicago as a pacemaker, but was allowed to finish, and that brought him 2 hours 9 minutes. So, well, where do you get that talent from? Anyway, two fine runners, and they are dueling it out. With a glance behind, well, you should be able to tell just from the footsteps and the breath that he's got company. He knows that. Maybe just to see, well, is this the only guy I've got with me? Is there anybody else? The high quality runners, when you get close-ups of their faces, the jaws are just so relaxed. It's that eternal search for the right formula of all the training and effort, but also to look relaxed. And look, there's somebody who thinks he can run alongside the leaders for a little while, and that's the answer. No, you cannot, because they're better than you. Little variation. Now Rotic may just feel, well, Gebrselassie, why don't you come up alongside me? We can just share it and then decide who's the stronger man closer to the finish. And those are on the tandem, two more race officials, don't worry. Not wearing the green rain suits, but they're definitely wearing a race kit, organizer's kit. Interesting woman on the tandem and the rear seat. I don't think she's quite reading a book. I think she may well be looking at a book of race splits to work out what sort of pace they're going. I think it would be rather strange to come on the rear seat of a bike and read a novel when you're so close to a marathon race. Anyway, we have those two men in front, Lukas Rotic of Kenya and Girmay Gebrselassie of Eritrea, and this is really building up for a special finish in the Hamburg-Marathon 2015. Yeah, they know it's coming to the moment of truth. Gebrselassie has not tried to lead. For a short time he just floated up alongside Lukas Rotic, but he's been content for the Kenyan to set the pace. Everybody else is out of the picture. It's been a long morning for them through the greenery and the suburbs, and then back into the heart of Hamburg in pursuit of the first prize of 20,000 euros. Out into the light, and still it's Rotic who looks strong, he looks confident. And if you are that confident, then why not lead? Steven Chebogot, one of those trailing, but there are 3 places on the podium. And there's the prize money, and the prize money goes all the way down to 6th place. 6th place gets you €1,000. So get in the top 6 and you get a payday. Philemon Rono, who's been dropped, he's in 3rd place. Sound effects picking up a few conversations. Sounds like some in Swahili. Or maybe Amharic. Wow. Gebrselassie does look very relaxed. Just the way he's looking at his watch. He just looks perhaps to have a little more. We shall see. On paper, at least, Lukas Rotic is the faster by some 2 minutes, and there he is, he's going away. I just wondered whether the young Eritrean might surprise us, but this may not be decisive. Rotic just grabbed a bottle and then spurted away. Now, does Gebrselassie have a reply? He's got to dig in and get back in contact. They went through 39 kilometers, 1:57 minutes and 40 seconds. So coming up to 40, and that means, just to remind you of the classic dimensions of the marathon, once they get to 40k, that means it's just over 2 kilometers remaining, 2.195 kilometers. It's getting down into the kind of regions where they'd be running hard intervals on the track or in fartlek sessions, just thinking 2 more kilometers, 2 more kilometers, 5 laps of the track. And this is Lukas Rotic, an experienced marathon runner, a 2:07 man. And has he broken this young Eritrean Girmay Gebrselassie? That gap is growing. With every stride, he's putting distance between him and Gebrselassie. Well, they've run through 40 kilometers. It's a lead of a couple of seconds, but that camera shot tells you more, actually. It's 15 meters, 20 meters, and it's growing. Lukas Rotic is in the lead. He's got to press home that advantage. In terms of the other contenders for the podium, well, the man currently in 3rd place is Philemon Rono. He's almost 30 seconds off the lead. And then a handful of seconds behind him in 4th, another of the Kenyans, Steven Chebogot. But for the moment, it's all about the man in the lead, and that's Lukas Rotic of Kenya. And Lukas Rotic, who was 8th last year, is really on the cusp of achieving will be one of the highlights of his career. And he went on after the 8th a year ago. He went on to finish 2nd in Amsterdam, run this 2:07. So his career is really on an upward surge. On the They've passed along the west bank of the Alster Lake, back into the Rotenbaum area of the city, right into the heart of the city, and the TV tower and the Carolina Strasse. That is the finish right by the Expo. And all these signs, all the fact that there's a lot more spectators on the street, all the marketing will let Lukas Rotic know that he's in the lead. But the man in second has got to hang in there. It's going to be hard for him because he can only glimpse Rotic now between the cars and the officials on their bikes. We're looking at about 3 or 4 minutes left to run. It's been a finely judged effort from Lukas Rotic, this big pack. So often in these big city marathons, you have a big pack and it's 10 or more men and they go through halfway. And it's kind of a slow burn. You know that no one's going to hair off at 10K and try and win a marathon. Well, unless there's the late great Sammy Wanjiro in the Beijing Olympics, of course. But Rotic has wasted his time. He's done what every sensible, high-quality marathoner just about does, and that's wait. You go through 30K, there was still a group there, half a dozen men. Everyone suffers. It's a question of who can suffer and come through, who can persevere. And then when it was down to a handful, down to 3, Rotic hung in there. The last pacemaker was Eliud Taros. Then he was gone. Gideon Kipchoge went. And then it was just 2 men, Lukas Rotic and this young Eritrean, Girmay Gebrselassie. And he's broken him. And he's just got to hold it together for another couple of minutes of running, and he'll win the Hamburg title. He's going to follow that drum beat. Well, the course record has just gone out of reach. It was never really a target apart from the early days. This is all about racing, and none the worse for that. So the course record of Eliud Kipchoge set 2 years ago, 2 hours, 5 minutes and 30 seconds. That will stay in the Hamburg record books for another year. But the question of who will be the winner, and it's looking like the man from Kenya, Rotic. And Lukas Rotic, he knows he's got this in this grasp. This is going to be the career highlight so far for the man from Kenya. Absolutely spot-on performance. And you know, when he was coming up as a youngster, his father, he had to travel 200 kilometers for the Kenyan School Championships. His father went with him and was disappointed that he didn't win the title outright. And Lukas Rotic had to explain that, Dad, the all Kenyan Schools Championships, they're tough. Don't expect me to win everything. But on this day in Hamburg, Lukas Rotic is coming home for victory. And wherever his father is, if he's watching TV back home in Kenya, he knows his son is going to be a winner. Lukas Rotic of Kenya takes the Haspa Hamburg Marathon title 2015. And unofficially, he's broken his personal best. This is a runner on the rise. And coming home for second place, tremendous performance from this 19-year-old Eritrean, Girmay Gebrselassie. What a run for Gebrselassie. No relation to Haile, but an Eritrean of real talent. There you are. He's broken his best, which he only set last October in Chicago on his marathon debut, by a minute and a half. Wow. Well, now all the excitement is who's going to finish in third place. Did we see a third placer coming in? Oh no, this is this is our third placer. Philemon Rono. A little outside 2 hours 8 minutes for Rono. Very creditable performance for him, and consistent too, because he was third last year here. Well, unofficial winning time for Lucas Rokic of Kenya, 2 hours 7 minutes and 17 seconds. In second place, Girmay Gebreselassie of Eritrea, 2:07.47. And when you consider that Girmay, his first marathon, his only marathon before this, was Chicago last year when he ran 2:09.08. Well, he's improved by 1 minute 25. That's magnificent. And in second place, well, in fact, I was a little deceived. Philemon Rono came in fourth, and the figure we saw from the aerial was live and finishing in third. And that's another Kenyan. Stephen Chebogot finished third, 2:08.01. And in fourth, Philemon Rono, rather, after his third place last year. Now, the women's race. Who is going to take that crown? Still quite a long way to go for them. Meseret Hailu and Sylvia Kibet now, the experienced marathon runner. We had a brief shot there. Meseret Hailu, the woman who knows what the pain of the marathon is like, against the debutant. Meantime, back with the men, and here we have Batochir of Mongolia coming in, and this could be a place in the top 6. We've slightly lost the finishing order of the men, but we've got the top 5 across the line, so this could well be finishing number 6. Not a personal best for Batochir, but a really solid effort from a tough racer. He can go back to the northeast of Britain and his club mates in Morpeth Harriers, and deservedly give him a round of applause. Mika Kogo, well, also continuing to learn about the marathon. The former world record holder at 10k on the road. Oh. And Tesfaye Abera finishing and showing what everybody knows who does a marathon, that it takes its punishment. Sabrina Mockenhart. The women are not yet at 40k. They have gone through 35k. Mockenhart has moved up. She moved up a place to 7th, but in terms of time and the leaders, she's dropped further behind. She's almost 5 minutes, or at 35 kilometers, she was almost 5 minutes behind the leading trio. And at 35k, here's how it was for the women. Well, together at the front, Meseret Hailu of Ethiopia and the marathon debutant Sylvia Kibet of Kenya. And then just, well, 4 seconds down was the Namibian record holder, Beata Naigambo. So in terms of placing, she's gone up 1 in the field. I suppose it was to be expected that the 2 leading women who are on perhaps better form currently and more prepared for this marathon. Mockenhart hasn't had the best of form earlier in the year, that she would be further behind. So I think in general she's putting in a solid effort, and she's slipped behind. She's going to be, currently she's running on 2:31 pace, so she's slipped a minute or so behind. But certainly, when we look at the front of the women's race, those 2, Meseret Hailu and Sylvia Kibet, to be very interesting. And we're hoping to have a word with Lucas Rokic, the winner of the men's title, an ebullient Rokic as well. He's mentioning that great story about his father thinking, oh, why didn't you win when he went to the schools championships? Lucas has got his answer now when he goes back home to Kenya, and he's got 20,000 euros as well.
Ja, wussten wir nicht, dass wir schon dran sind. Wir harren der Dinge. Außerdem, Lukas musste ja noch die ganze Fotosession über sich ergehen lassen. Das macht er gerne. Congratulations, you did a tremendous job. I think you are really satisfied, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm satisfied. Although I was expecting to run 2:06, but winning is better.
Ja, er ist natürlich hochzufrieden. Vor allem, er ist eine persönliche Bestzeit gelaufen. Das war ziemlich
2:06 was his target.
Satisfied
But,
with the
with the win.
and the atmosphere in Hamburg.
Yeah, I'm satisfied because the goes all the way round for the two. There were a lot of cheers on the way, so I say let's keep pushing. Let's keep pushing.
What's about the rain?
The rain. We are used to the rain because it affects everybody, not me alone. Even in Kenya where we train sometimes with the rain. So it was not good for running the time, but winning also is better for me.
Das ist klar, dass der Regen so ein bisschen
interesting comment he made about the rain, because he said it didn't bother him in races, and Kenyans will race in any conditions, of course. But in training in Kenya, you know, they don't run in the rain.
After this victory.
Anyway, let's hear more
from
Lucas.
It's a big party right now?
Yeah, I think this is very, very good for me, because 2013 I was having an injury, which I went for surgery, and then last year I tried my best here in Hamburg, and I was pushing 8 to 2:09. Last year at the end of this year, 2014, I ran Hamburg and Amsterdam, and I was pushing 2:07, 18. Today I come back to Hamburg, where I start my marathon, and it was perfect because I won. Perfect for me.
Perfect, yeah. Das verstehen, glaube ich, alle.
Interesting comment. When he talks about the injury in the operation, he had knee surgery a couple of years ago, so he's come back from that. And indeed, as he says, Lucas wrote makers in front of us, Stefan van den Broek, or rather Hugo van den Broek. I said Stefan because I looked at my list, and Stefan van den Broek, and I think, well, they may be related. One's Belgian, one's Dutch. Stefan is pacing the first women's group, as Meseret Hailu and Sylvia Kibet, and Hugo is pacing Sabine Mockenhout, and along with Alberto Mosca. And then there's a Turkish vest, the red of Turkey, on the outside as well. In Hamburg. Marcel Brautigam of Germany has been her pacer all the way through, and we're looking to see where Sylvia Kibet has gone. Well, she's further down that road, I think. Certainly no sign of her. Hailu Meseret. Oh, it's going to be some cheer for the Ethiopian family, because her other half, her husband, Fiesa Bekele, did not make the top 3. In fact, we haven't seen him come in yet. Well, Meseret Hailu has run an assured, controlled race. Always in the lead group. Perhaps not quite at her sharpest. Bet, let alone any other challenger, is putting her grasp on the title in danger. She knows she's there. She knows that it's not even now a question of keeping it going. It's just cruising across that line and knowing that you've got a victory, and an important one as well. She's a winner in Amsterdam 3 years ago, and then she had a few injuries which slowed her career development. But she is a former world half marathon champion, and this is Meseret Hailu of Ethiopia coming home, going through the crises that can affect anybody, whatever their quality in the marathon, and coming back and looking strong on the roads of Hamburg this morning. She's had good form earlier in the year in the build-up to this race, running fast half marathons. That's the way you prepare for the full marathon distance. And this is going to be a good time for Meseret Hailou, the winner of the women's title in the Haspa Hamburg Marathon 2015, Meseret Hailou of Ethiopia. And that's reward for strong and finely judged running. Perhaps not at her very best, but she's done everything that was needed. And coming through for an impressive debut in the marathon, Sylvia Kibet of Kenya. This is her first marathon, and Sylvia Kibet, well, she's just outside 2 hours 26, but that's still impressive going. And the third place finisher from Namibia, their national record holder. This is Beata Nangambo, and can she break her own national record? The target, 2:27.54, and she's going to be well inside that. So, Nangambo, can she get inside 2:27? Third place is assured, but can Nangambo add just an extra luster? She's got under 200 meters to go. Come on, dig it in. This is the last interval. This is like a sprint session. She's going to be outside 2:27, but she's still going to smash her national record. Nangambo, another one to emerge from this Hamburg Marathon with credit. This is a strong performance for the Namibian. And here she comes, well inside the national record, and third place for Beata Nangambo. Well, unofficially around 2:27.23, which means she's taken around 30 seconds off her own national record. Very good run for Nangambo in third place. Still places to be achieved and out on the road still, but not far to go. Sabrina Mockenhout, we've tracked her progress in this marathon in detail. There's male pacemakers just urging her to just keep it going, and careful glance at the clock. But she's going to be well outside 2:30.